everyone, welcome to Lonely Tree Entertainment and welcome to the first entry in the Corey Haim movie series, which you've just seen the intro there. So basically I'm a big fan of the two Coreys, and this series is going to focus on Corey Haim, and this one would be a little bit longer than I planned to do with the rest of them, so I plan on revisiting a lot of these movies if you have seen them and rant on a while, talk about my experience of finding them, but I'm going to focus on I don't want to really do these jump cutting, but if it gets it quicker, just a little bit quicker, we're getting there. The first one is about the Lost Boys, and I think it's most importantly to start with the Lost Boys, rattle off there. But yeah, this series wants to focus on Corey films through not in any kind of chronological order, and if you can get them. Availability is a big one. Performance, really. Now I have done something like this in the past, not ranting on, cutting away, but obviously I used to do the good, the bad and the what the fucks, and Corey Haim and Corey Feldman were the first two artists I did, where you would look at a pivotal point. Pivotal? That's a word. Just made it up. It's in the dictionary now. Pivotal. Anyway. That series is mainly focused on he's a movie and that's who you know. It's like saying, why do you know Kevin Costner? Is it Waterworld, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Revenge, Bodyguard? Someone always has a connection of someone's first impression of a first movie, and then you look at it and go, right, I'll watch that because they're in it. And you're like, what the fuck? And that's what that series was, because you know, you've got good films, you've got some bad films, and you've got some total what the fuck films, and Corey Haim is a great example of that. No one is the king of VHS. I've decided to start with the Lost Boys, because he was always the other Corey. Now Corey Feldman, I will also do a series like this for Corey Feldman's, but Corey Feldman in the 80s was Goonies, Gremlins, Friday the 13th, seen that way too young. He was everywhere, and all of a sudden, there was another Corey. Yeah, there was another Corey, and Corey literally got a bit of more traffic in some smaller roles and some smaller films, and then gained massive notoriety, like criticism, where am I going with that? So yeah, then there was another Corey. So Corey Haim and Corey Feldman both auditioned for the Goonies. They both auditioned for another film called Lucas. Now Lucas was Corey Haim's breakout performance. Before then he had popped up in a few little small roles there, but Lucas really drove home like his performance in character and performance. Meanwhile, Feldman's like, who's this other Corey who's stealing my roles here? But them two at that time were the go-to people for certain elements. Elements? There's another one to add to the dictionary. So, when you look back at assembling the two Coreys in the first film into The Lost Boys, these guys connected and basically went on to do multiple films. But we're going to talk about The Lost Boys. Now I'm going to try not to jump cut so much now and literally just go on the rant here, because what I'm trying to get at is the fact that my first experience of Corey Haim was through The Lost Boys. Big fan of Corey Feldman, he just popped up in everything. Gremlins is one of my favourite films of all time. And The Lost Boys is an ensemble cast. You can never name check somebody bigger on the box. I know recently with the artwork before 4 came out, they were going to go Jason Patric, Kiefer Sutherland. Nah. To me, Lost Boys is an ensemble. If you're going to get technical, Corey Feldman's technically the star of it because it's alphabetical order. Now, The Lost Boys has transitioned into other things over the years, and all the Lost Boys have appeared on Lonely Tree Entertainment except Corey Haim, unfortunately, who's passed away. Now, when you look at that and you go, right, top casting, do you know what I mean? Top casting, they would, but to me, I know a lot of people go, what, really? I think this is the biggest film Corey Haim was ever in. I don't think he got any bigger, box office wise and cultural, you know. The Lost Boys was made it. Now, if you look back now and you go, well, it's had 6 million views on YouTube and loads of likes and so many followers on Instagram, you've got to look at The Lost Boys and go, wow, can you imagine how many people's actually seen The Lost Boys? This is something that, you know, was a massive success in the 80s, because the change of the 80s movies, stuff like Heathers, Breakfast Club, where teenage movies were like, whoa, where we're going there, we need a 15 rating. we need something, you know, because again, it's all about the evolution of cinema. And Lost Boys is like a horror comedy. And I think the ensemble cast and the casting of two different types, when you've got Kiefer Sutherland and Billy Worth, and you've got like Alex Winter there as well. I'm just looking over here and going, right, let's talk about the cast of Lost Boys, because they're all that. And you look at that, and then you look at like let's cast younger, let's get Jameson Newlander, and let's get Corey Feldman, and appeal to a big, you know, audience, and it's the clash of cultures. Now the story's great, the story's fun, soundtrack is absolutely awesome, and the score needs to really be some vinyl. But Corey's a performance in this, so he comes in and he's got this kind of different look to it. Haim's look at the time, he's got the short, spiky blonde hair, he's got quite chubby in the cheeks, I would say. You know, he's got his little hamster face that he's always had. One of the big films I didn't mention about this time as well, he had Lucas, but he also had Silver Bullet. So I think like Feldman and him going into this were quite veterans of horror movies. Kiefer Sutherland had only been briefly in Stand By Me and a few other Canadian films. Jason Patrick's dibble-dabbled. Did anyone else think Jason Patrick just disappeared until he popped up in Sleepers and Speed 2 the same year, like 10 years earlier? Oh yeah, it's him from Lost Boys. Anyway, I think, you know, the veterans, Silver Bullet was a really good film, and Haim carries a lot of that film for being such a small actor in it. So he comes into this movie, and I think the chemistry is there. The chemistry is totally there with Feldman, and it's there with his brother, Jason Patrick Michael. He plays off well against Kiefer Sutherland and the other. I think what they did as well is there's a certain divide between the two boy groups, and that's obviously works well for it. Great performance, has some great lines in it. Obviously, Death by Stereo when he kills Billy Worth. What are you with the flying nun? It is a line from the movie. He's into his comic books. And there's a lot of stuff there in the performance. I think it really carries well, because when you've got that many actors, and again, this is the 80s, this is before they were trying to do ensemble things, it's going to be hard to stand out. See, Jameson Newlander gets lost in the shuffle if you look at the two Coreys. Jameson Newlander should have been in License to Drive, the film that would follow, with the two Coreys, but he stands out on there. And I think, you know, going forward, he carries it well. And it's a shame it ended the way it did going later down the franchise, but as a movie, it's such a cultural hit. But again, I think when you look at Haim's movies, Feldman's arguable where you can go, well, he was in The Goonies, he was in The Gremlins. Haim was in The Lost Boys. License to Drive there, like they're all Corey Haim movies up there with Feldman as well. But Haim never reached the peak as he did with The Lost Boys. He rode the wave. He rode the wave all the way to the beach. And he always tried to paddle back out to get a second wave to come back in. You know, he always reached for the bigger. If you were going to go with the bigger box office, Crank 2 years later, but essentially that would be inflation. Lost Boys is a cult classic movie, always been available. It is now tagged with 1 and 2 in a trilogy box set, so it captures a wider audience. People still to this day are finding that movie and finding a love for it. It's aged well, phones aren't an issue, scores really well. The capture of the 80s, it is getting remade. Where to go with it, who knows. But when it comes to Corey Haim, to me, it's his biggest movie and my first introduction. So throughout the series, I will be revisiting all these movies, and I'll rewatch some of them I'll be like, oh, not again. Some of them I have massive love for. Some of them I've got newfound love for. He's an actor who unfortunately is no longer with us, but had a peak of absolute mega stardom, and as I said, once again rode that wave until unfortunately there was no more waves left. So yeah, Lost Boys needs to be watched. And one more thing I need to bring into the series, availability. Lost Boys, massive on VHS. It's easy to grab here. That was a big one back in the day of VHS. Give someone just staring at you. Lost Boys is seen every single format. DVD, Laserdisc, UMD, Blu-ray, and more recently has been released on 4K, which I don't want to break the pile there. So it's seen an evolution of everything. A lot of them behind me never seen the days of VHS. Some of them were only on DVD. That almost looks 3D. Still there. Some of them have never seen the light of day. I've been Stephen Monkey Mason. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the outtake. Hello in the outtakes. Going to try to make this short because I really want to make these videos really short. I wasn't planning on jump cutting at the start, but again, I want to show passion and love for this like series. You know what I mean? I'm only going to do them for actors I really like, collect them and like find in the movies and then revisit them. But I'm not sure what to do next. I could just go bah and talk about another one, which I think I am going to do. So I'm going to get some mojo going here and probably do the second one. Might move the camera, be quite lazy, because I do often find myself watching a lot of these. Funny enough, I watched Watchers recently. I watched Dream a Little Dream 4 times. It came out on Blu-ray. Last Resort. Every time I've had a few beers, I do put these on, but I tend not to revisit some of the other ones. So that's the plan of this series, you know. I want to give a massive shout out to Vampire Mike and Dan over in America as well, because Corey Haim is an international star. You can get his movies all over the world, sort of. And because I do videos like this, people come to me and start talking, and that's how I originally met Dan, Slaunch TV, and then Vampire Mike. We did a great video for Prayer of the Roller Boys together. Double Switch is one. We've been popping up in different videos. I have no idea what that was. I must go investigate. I'm not even want to guess what that was. Right. The next outtake's going to be me find that. There are Haim, Corey Feldman movies. That's what fell. The things fell from up above. Idle Hands, Devon Sawyer. That's someone who could also appear on this series. He says some random films. Extreme Ops. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.